I'm Kiana. So today we're going to do a TED Talk on, as you can see, what affected the conscription crisis. So this is how conscription started. It was introduced on May 24th, 1917. In an unsuccessful attempt to acquire a greater voice in imperial affairs, the Canadian government promised to arise an expeditionary force too large to be maintained by voluntary enlistment. The required legislation, the War Military Service, worked its way through Parliament during the summer and was set to be passed in late August. It required all male citizens between the ages of 20 and 45, the subject to military service, if called upon for the duration of the war. Some Canadians, British immigrants, English-speaking Canadians felt this was a necessary contribution because the war was faltering. Some Canadians felt this was oppressive and showed how dishonest the government was. Government had said there would be no forced enlistments when the war broke out. Most people who thought this way were French Canadians, farmers, unionized workers, and non-British immigrants. So, it's believed that the conscription crisis had a negative effect on Canada, as the historian said. One can say 1917 was a turning point. It instilled a sense of suspicion and distance, and I think it did irreparable damage.
So our first reason for believing that Confederation had a negative effect on Canada was how it divided the English and the French. Although there was already a great amount of tension between the English and French citizens of Canada, conscription divided these two groups even more. Quebecers were subjected to hostility and hatred in Canadian media by the English. They were seen as cowards and traitors for their refusal to send their young men to die in Europe. Some English people even went as far as to call the French German agents. However, the French had a very good reason for not participating in the war as much as their English counterparts. The majority of their population felt no loyalty or sense of patriotism towards Britain. They saw themselves as people living in a sovereign country that wasn't necessarily submissive to Britain. They felt little attachment to England and saw the army as being comprised almost entirely of English Canadians. Because of this, the French were especially angry when conscription was introduced, and their government sent warnings to Prime Minister Gordon about this, which she ignored. One large consequence was that the Conservative Party was unable to gain votes in Quebec for years to come. After conscription was introduced, the concept of Quebec independence came into existence. They learned to depend on their own resources and forces for survival. This created a large divide between the French and English provinces, governments, and communities, and had lasting political effects on Canada as a whole.
Though most French people opposed the idea of conscription, they made several significant contributions to the Canadian war effort that were ignored by the rest of Canada. It has been argued that French Canadians helped win the War of the Allies, since their independence let them discover how to attack under their own colonel and win several important battles. For example, at Battle Line of French Canadians won the Battle of the Somme in 1916, which helped change the course of the war. Quebecers often refer to World War I as the Forgotten War, since their efforts were never properly recognized. While English Canadians see the war as a time of military triumph, this led to an even bigger wedge in Canada's linguistic divide. Finally, there was a significant language dispute in Canada at this time that made its way into the military as well, similar to how Ontario had decided to restrict the teaching of French language in schools in 1912. the military catering to English participants more, and often was impossible for the French to get the training they needed. Canada seemed to be sending a message that the French were would always be the minority. Quebec saw this message as a direct assault on the French Canadians.
It annoyed a lot of Canadians because the way that the government supported conscription made Canada fail to be a country of liberty and equality. As we know, by 1917, a huge amount of soldiers had given their life to this war. Realizing the cruelty of the war, many people were no longer in favor of it, and people's passion for fighting dramatically declined. Therefore, at that time, forcing people going to the war sparked huge outrage. In order to make the Military Service Act be passed, Borden demanded things that had made Canada fail to be a country of liberty and equality, and ruined the relationship between government and the citizens. One thing they did was manipulating the election. The Wartime Elections Act gave the vote to the relatives of soldiers, which are groups tending to favor conscription because they supported their men in the field. However, the act denied the vote to many immigrants from enemy countries, also called enemy aliens, unless they had a family member in military service. Therefore, the government was not being fair and transparent. The government also failed to be honest. Borden's government, anxious for farmers' votes, agreed to offer agricultural exemptions from compulsory service until the end of the war, but they broke the promise after the election. So the farmers' disaffection led to the development of several new federal and provincial parties. The government's action also caused French-speaking Canadians continuing their protests. Young men by the tens of thousands joined others from across Canada in refusing to register for the selection process. Of those that did register, 93% applied to exemption. The disaffection resulted in several days of riot and street battles in Quebec City and Easter 1980.
So finally, there was acts in place surrounding conscription at the time. Under existing acts, Borden was not allowed to send conscripted men overseas. The existing act stated that no person in Canada would be conscripted unless Canada was being invaded or for the defense of Canada. There was no danger of Germany invading Canada, so Borden shouldn't have sent conscripted people overseas. So in conclusion, we believe that conscription had a negative impact on Canada.